Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Erin Molan Show. I'm Erin Molan. I never say that, probably for obvious reason, but just in case you were confused, I guess there are shows that are called something and the person who hosts is not that actual person. So just in case, I'm Erin Molan. It's great to have your company. We are so grateful for every single one of you. Thank you all so much for tuning in, however you do that and wherever you are around the world. It is a huge episode coming up. Before I get into who we have, and we've got three massive guests, I want to do a quick shout out. Canada, thank you all so much. We did a Canadian special yesterday. If you haven't seen it, it's 40 minutes all on Canada and the complete decay of your once incredible nation, how to get back to its greatness, the failings of government, and the terrorists who just walk freely in the streets not having to hide. So make sure you check that out. Malaysia. I want to give a shout out to Malaysia. We are in the top 10 on the podcast charts in Malaysia consistently. And I don't feel like I've given you any attention. So I mean, this sounds bizarre, but I'm not sure why you're so into our show, but I'm so glad that you are. And I'm going to spend this weekend doing a little bit of research so I can cover some stuff for you guys as well. I lived in Indonesia, as a lot of you know. Bahasa Malay is very similar to Bahasa Indonesia. So, terima kasih banyak, Malaysia. Terima kasih banyak. I'm hoping that's one of the words that is similar. I just said thank you so much. So thank you so much, Malaysia. We love that you are listening to the podcast. I'm sure you're watching as well, but shout out to all of you guys. Okay, let's get into what is coming up on this show. Are you ready? It's big. Dan Feferman, former Israeli intelligence officer, absolutely tears to shreds Candace Owens, and I know we don't really like talking about her assassination theories. Well, she's saying it's absolute, evidential, set in stone. Israel and France are trying to kill her. She's gone on this social media rant. If you follow her, you would have seen it all, saying she's got evidence, she's got receipts, she's got names, etc., that the governments of Israel and France have come together somehow to plot her assassination, and money has changed hands from Macron. Because obviously the French and Israeli governments have so much in common at the moment. I mean, as I say during our conversation with Dan, the president of France was welcoming the president of Palestine, as he called him, with his blood-stained hands, shaking them, the guy who pays terrorists to kill Israelis. They don't have a lot in common. Macron welcomes the president of Syria, who was an al-Qaeda terrorist, but says, no, we'll arrest Netanyahu. So I can't imagine those two governments coming together in this kind of beautiful moment, united in their one goal. I mean, anyway, this former Israeli intelligence officer actually goes through what they do when they look to assassinate someone and how intense a process that is. And we're talking about kind of terrorists of enemy states, not democratic allies or bloggers, essentially. So that is a huge conversation. We've also got Rabbi Schneier. Now, this man, a couple of days ago, spoke on the phone to the mayor-elect Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City. Mamdani rang him. They had a conversation. Now, I was expecting the rabbi to say, yes, I was cordial, and he hit back. He used the words half-baked to Mamdani on the phone directly. Also pointed out some home truths to him. He goes through basically the whole conversation and Mamdani's reactions. You do not want to miss it. We've also got a lawyer called Michael who is suing the guy that Trump pardoned, the crypto guy, because he's been funding, allegedly, October 7. 3 massive guests with big stories all coming up just in this episode. So let me keep the headlines really short because, well, we're about to create a few of our own right here. And you, along with us, are doing that as well. Mamdani, of course, we'll talk about him with the rabbi very shortly. But he's announced a new member of his transition team, Alex Vitale, who wrote a book about the end of policing. You could not make this up. And he's brought him on to help with community safety. Wrote a book called The End of Policing, all about how to bring about the end of policing. And Mamdani in New York City has brought him on to help with community safety, to transition him into power. I can't. New York City, run. Don't walk the hell out of there. Now, the opposite, of course, goes if you're a criminal or a scumbag, you should stay put or head to New York City. Head to the Big Apple. You're about to have absolute free reign. Now, in the fair, just and common sense world of female sport, we have another champion to celebrate. I love celebrating women in sport. I'm a woman, was never particularly good at sport. I've got a daughter who is very good at jazz, and she can run pretty fast, but look, she's not going to be Nadia Comaneci, let's be honest. But I love celebrating women in sport. Jami Booker has just taken out the world's strongest woman competition. Have a look. Have a look at Jami Booker.
So women don't get a whole lot of respect or appreciation or payment in this sport, strongman / strongwoman in my case. But apparently what we do get is more TikTok followers. I have like 40,000 more TikTok followers than the world's strongest man. In fairness, he has way more Instagram followers than I do, but that's weird, right? How... You guys like me a lot, I guess.
The world's strongest woman competition. Yep, you guessed it. Jami is a biological male. And, I'm never, ever nasty on this show, and this is not nasty to point out that it is fairly bloody obvious. You can't half tell. There is an unbeatable, irrefutable biological advantage that Jami has. This, again, is a disgrace. It is not bigotry to point out that a man should not be competing against women, particularly in strength-based competitions. This is the ultimate strength-based competition. Like, if it was chess, we could say, okay, cool. I would put my mind up against Bob from Melbourne any day. I probably wouldn't win because I'm hopeless at chess, but what I'm saying is there's no difference there. Physically, there is. Biologically, there is. So again, this is not bigotry to call out that this is an absolute farce. It's a disgrace. It's trying now, by pointing this out and by fighting this, that is the upholding of human rights. Not the opposite, where people worry about upholding the human rights of one person who was born a male, who's trying to win female sporting competitions. That ain't upholding human rights. That is a joke. An absolute joke. Okay, a quick run through of the headlines today because we've got so many amazing guests. I want to introduce you now to Dan Feferman, the former Israeli intelligence officer who is talking to me, well, about a fair few things, but Candace is the key here. I ask him specifically, as someone who's been in the inner world of, well, Israeli intelligence, whether this could be actually feasible, that Israel has joined with France to plot an assassination against a YouTuber from America. Dan Feferman, former Israeli intelligence officer, author, expert, commentator, a million other things. First of all, thank you so much for your service. And secondly, thank you so much for joining me here on the Erin Molan Show.
What a pleasure. Thanks for
Talk
having
to me about the Muslim Brotherhood and the amount of money that is being funneled into, particularly in America, but it's all over the Western world, into college systems, schools, any kind of institution where they can infiltrate the minds of young people.
Jumping right into the deep end. Muslim
Always.
Brotherhood is something that the Western world should have been paying attention to much long ago. The Middle Eastern countries actually have been paying attention to it for quite some time. And there's a reason why it's outlawed and cracked down on and considered a terrorist organization in the, we'll call it the functioning, thriving countries of the Middle East, and why the West is finally maybe starting to wake up to it. So Muslim Brotherhood, of course, we're talking about the politicization of radical Islam, and they have a long, patient, planned out, methodical approach to Islamize certainly the Middle East and overthrow the moderate, what they call the secular regimes, but eventually overtake the Western powers and turn them into Muslim or Islamist societies and countries. And so they've embarked on a multi-decade campaign that is quite planned out. It's very organized. Every Muslim Brotherhood cell actually works according to the same organizational structure. And as part of that structure, they have pumped, especially through the Qataris, billions of dollars into buying Western academia, into buying the chairs and the departments. in order to promulgate their ideology in a very kind of soft power and slow, methodical approach, and that's now finally starting to come to light.
You would understand more clearly had they been very secretive and very subtle in this mission. You would understand the Western world kind of dropping the ball on this. But this has been documented. They have made a plan that is very available for everyone to read. They're not hiding what they're trying to do. So why have so many Western nations over many governments, consecutive governments, failed to act on something that should terrify anyone who even has a modicum of a clue as to what they want to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, it boggles the mind, and I know in your country, it's something that's become more of an issue in the country where I grew up, in the United States. It's finally starting to come to the fore, and President Trump just announced that they're going to recognize Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. This is a big deal, and you're right. They've been talking about this. It's out in the open. I've been seeing experts who have been called, kind of nationalist right-wing kooks in different think tanks for at least the last 2 decades, talking about Muslim Brotherhood, exactly what they're going to do, showing their plans. I think one of the ways in which they've learned to operate is through the mechanisms of liberal democracies and utilizing the structures, the language, all the freedoms of liberal democracy, such as free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of organization, freedom of expression, the bedrocks. And they're using them quite cynically in order to advance their cause where they can through, and so far, as long as they
to
are
inevitably destroy all those things. They're using
to
the exact
inevitably
tools
bring
they
it
want
down
to.
and replace it with their model of Sharia law that subjugates everyone else. I mean, that's literally their playbook. They don't hide it.
When it comes to the media, so schools and colleges, we understand that. You look at the BBC as just one example, and name any mainstream network really, apart from a very rare few, who hasn't fallen victim to this. And I say that like they're almost innocent. No. They've made very conscious decisions to quote Hamas mouthpieces as factual information, to quote unverified X accounts saying they're on the ground in Gaza witnessing these horrors and these atrocities when they're actually in Poland or somewhere else. The media, what have you discovered as to why they have failed so miserably since October 7?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier the universities, and that's just part of a plan. And so part of the plan is also the takeover of the media. And finally, X just started exposing where all these bots and fake accounts are coming from. And thankfully, and you're seeing, I mean, it was so expected. All of us that are kind of behind the scenes in this game and on the social media wars knew that these accounts were not real. I had a guess that to the extent that they weren't real accounts. What you've had is, again, a multi-decade, multi-pronged, careful infiltration and takeover of the minds of the West, weaponizing the same things that have made the West great. And again, free speech, free media. And if you go back, so, we know Hamas, for example, and Hezbollah and the Iranian regime, they don't have, obviously, spokespeople like we do in the IDF or in any Western army. They have a propaganda arm that weaponizes the media, Al Jazeera and the other Qatari networks, which is Muslim Brotherhood as well. And when we know for a fact, because we've now found documents inside of Gaza from Hamas saying that they work directly with Al Jazeera. And together with a
couple of hostages were held by Al Jazeera journalists in Gaza.
You go. It's unbelievable. And if you bring into the mix the kind of UN corrupt systems where many of the UN employees themselves are also Hamas, you have this. I call it, sort of how you have money laundering. You have an information laundering mechanism. And you bring together what we talked about with the universities. And so you have now a generation, 2 generations, 3 generations of people who are now reporters and editors and researchers who went to supposedly the best universities in the West to study journalism, liberal arts, who have also been brainwashed in these kind of neo-Marxist, post-national ideas, post-colonial ideas. And they're very sympathetic to this idea that Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis are these noble freedom fighters, right? And anything that they do is absolutely justified. So they're sympathetic to their cause. I think we also have to take into account here, and we can't hide that there is always this base of deep anti-Semitism in society that, it's below the surface. It's 10 layers below the surface, and it takes some brave folks like yourselves who came out at the beginning of this war to really stand up to all of this media bias. But all of this creates this self-feeding loop that the media, I think, very actively plays into, and it doesn't realize that it's stuck in its own echo chamber of taking quite literally, Hamas propaganda statistics and not even questioning them, while always quoting and questioning Israeli official statistics. And it's something that if we're not careful, this could be the downfall of democratic societies, Western societies' ability to defend themselves in the face of such terrorist attacks.
We mentioned briefly the account that wasn't based where it said that it was. And I want to ask you another question about these foreign bots, essentially. And you've got the ones who essentially pose as Americans to try and almost convince the masses that this is a sentiment on the ground in those countries, that there is a shift away from Israel, et cetera, et cetera. There's also a hell of a lot of them that will jump on board accounts like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and almost sometimes without their knowledge, share and make viral, so that, again, those same people in America are going, oh, this is what's really big right now. The hosts are going, oh, this is resonating deeply with my base. I've got to keep going and do more of it and lean in. There are so many different ways in which these fake accounts are causing utter chaos in completely different nations.
100%. And what you've tapped into is another piece of that self-feeding mechanism. And it is quite literally out of the KGB Soviet Union propaganda playbook. Yeah. I mean, they literally wrote this. They taught the Palestinians how to do this back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and other kind of these revolutionary third world terrorist groups. And what it is just taking those same KGB tactics called active measures and adapting them to the modern social media era, where you can have armies of bots and now you have AI and et cetera. And the goal is exactly as you said. It's to create the impression that there is this mass movement against whatever cause it is you're trying to push. So we saw it with Israel. We saw this surge of anti-Semitism, first from the left, then from the right. I don't know if Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or others are getting paid quite handsomely. Certainly not $7,000 by the Israeli government. I have a feeling they're getting paid a lot more by the Russian.
Why didn't they make up a bigger number, can I ask you? I mean, if we're going to create a fake payment system, could we at least have had it larger?
Yeah, right. You think it'd be worth more with all the millions that, right? You're getting paid probably millions by the Mossad also, as we all are.
I can't even count my money right now. It's got so much of it.
I mean, it's always the fastest way, just to try to discredit someone that you disagree with. And the funny thing is, now they're being discredited as coming out as all these bots and accounts and et cetera. And I'm sure we're going to find out soon that, just like the universities in Georgetown and Columbia and others, that the Tucker Carlsons of the ecosystem, of the media ecosystem, are getting paid quite handsomely. We know Jackson Hinkle, I'm sure, is sitting there actually in Russia and pushing this propaganda. Some of it is fake and it's meant to create that impression, and then some of it are just opportunists who notice that, hey, this is what will get me likes and followers and money and fame, and they have no compunctions, throwing out any kind of morality, any kind of rules, and not really caring what it does to the system that we should be working to defend. That the Islamists, the communists, and just the general anti-West, anti-democracy dictatorships are working to erode for their own selfish gains.
I want to ask you, as we wrap up, as a former Israeli intelligence officer, to respond to the claims that Candace Owens over the past few days regarding Israel and France working together to assassinate her, money having changed hands, she's got the names of the assassins. I mean, you talk about opportunists and you talk about people who have completely lost the plot. What is your reaction, as someone who worked in the intelligence field in Israel, to the plausibility of something like that and to what she does in general in this space?
Yeah, I mean, I really can't tell if she's just playing this, card in order to to spike her popularity. She seems to have gone off the completely anti-Semitic conspiracy theory deep end. This is not how intelligence agencies in democratic countries work. They don't assassinate public figures. They don't assassinate journalists. They don't assassinate influencers. Even to make a decision to assassinate a political or a military leader of a foreign enemy is a huge deal. To choose to assassinate a non-political, non-military figure in an allied country is something so completely off the books that it's not even in the worst fiction novels that you might read about intelligence agencies. It's an absolutely ridiculous notion.
You look at, I mean, particularly the element of France and Israel suddenly deciding that they love each other and want to work together towards this common cause. I mean, Macron was standing there shaking the blood-stained hand of the president of the Palestinian Authority, as he called him, or of Palestine, the man who currently, not previously, currently pays terrorists to kill Israelis. And all of a sudden, though, they're going to put those differences aside in this one common purpose. It is, I mean, she doesn't even look embarrassed when she says it.
Yeah, she's not blinking. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. She seems to be spiraling off the deep end here into these conspiracy theories, as anti-Semites tend to do, because there's just absolutely nothing rational about it. And if
wait there, Dan, because she has receipts and she has evidence, and if you just subscribe to her paid Substack, you'll see.
Oh, is that what it is?
You'll see. I mean, whatever it is, it's always something to do with. It'll come if you just. I want to end this on somewhat of a positive note, if I can. What are you hopeful about? What element of this calamity right now, this mess, gives you hope? Is it that we're almost at rock bottom, which means we'll have nowhere lower to go?
Quite the opposite. The last few years, and prior to October 7th, which was, here in Israel, an absolute low point in so many ways and the tragedy of the day. But, prior to that, I was working very deeply on the Abraham Accords. And what I realized, traveling around the Middle East, speaking to dozens and dozens of Arab and Muslim intellectuals and journalists and even religious leaders, that they're actually, the Middle East is starting to work together. I'll say this cautiously, against the radical axis. And if there's one massive bright spot that came out of the last 2 years of war, is that the radical axis led by Iran with the Hezbollah, with the Syrian regime, which has fallen, and Hezbollah, which has all been but defeated, and Hamas, which has all been but defeated, and the Houthis, who were severely weakened, is you have a window of opportunity here in the region. You have countries who were afraid of the radical axis who get it. You have countries, as I mentioned, who have outlawed Muslim Brotherhood as terrorist organizations. They all recognize Hamas as a terrorist organization. And I want to say something here that seems to have gone under the radar of everyone. I've got an article and some documentaries that'll come out soon on Middle East 24. Is the genius of the Trump peace plan, the 20-point peace plan, which was adopted by the United Nations Security Council, was not that Hamas accepted it, because Hamas didn't accept it. It's that virtually the entire Arab world and most of the important Muslim powers in the world, including Pakistan, including Indonesia and others, all stood on the same side of the agreement as Israel was and against Hamas. Yeah. And the agreement very clearly put the blame of this conflict on Hamas. It said Hamas has to disarm, demilitarize, and Gaza has to be de-radicalized. Hamas cannot stay in power. I mean, that's a major achievement in the balance of power. It was partly brought about because of Israel's massive military victories. Israel's not always good at translating them into strategic victories, but the military victories of the last 2 years have been astounding. And I think we're on the right trajectory in the Middle East. What I hope is now happening in the West is as we're uncovering how much of this radicalism is actually fake. I travel around a lot around the U.S. I just came back from a 3-week speaking tour. I do this quite often. And you realize that the majority of Americans, I can imagine the same things probably in a lot of Europe and in a lot of in Australia and Canada, is that the majority of people are not actually that radicalized. We get that impression from social media. We get that impression from these liberal or super progressive bubbles that don't really reflect society. And what I hope is happening now is a counter reaction to this radical shift back. I hope this crackdown on Muslim Brotherhood, this exposing of Muslim Brotherhood, of Qatari money in the universities, of these bots, it will finally do something. At the end of the day, I think democracies, liberal, free societies will always win because there's something real to offer. And we
Yeah.
saw the Soviet Union collapse, the Iranian regime will collapse. These radical societies that have to be held together with brute force and with lies and propaganda cannot stand on their own
Yeah.
because they don't have something real to offer. And the more we expose it, the more we fight to teach pride in our own societies, in our own civilizations, and actively fight in a unified manner against these. I call it the paradigm of builders and destroyers, and that's what
Yeah.
October 7th exposed to us. And we have to be builders, and builders have to be proactive, and we have to actively work in a united manner against these destroyers. And I hope that that's what's kind of happening in the Middle East finally, and in the Western world after all of this.
I think you're spot on. And as someone who, even over the past month, has been in Indonesia speaking with fairly high level government there, I grew up there for 7 years. I speak the language fluently. I'm very passionate about that country and about what could potentially happen when Prabowo was at the United Nations and acknowledged Israel's right to exist and said shalom. These are things that people haven't given enough weight to, the enormity of them. And having been in the US and Canada as well, I think you're absolutely right. My belief in the inherent good of most people is maintained. And I think you've summed it up so beautifully, so I won't even try and redo it for you in my own way because I won't do it better. So thank you, Dan Feferman. Really appreciate all that you do in this space. Thank you for using your voice. And where can people go and check out your stuff directly? It's a Middle East 24 channel?
Yeah, so we're on social media. We're on X, Middle East _24. On Instagram, Middle East 24, the shared E. We've got a YouTube channel. We've got a weekly show. We'll be adding a lot more content. And this is a new Middle East channel that's launched in collaboration with Visegrad 24. And we've got talent and voices, liberal, fresh voices from all over the Middle East. We are the new voice of the Middle East that Al Jazeera and the mainstream channels are hiding or bearing or not giving a chance to speak. And that's exactly what we're doing. And people can follow me on my own social media. I'm on X, Instagram, Facebook, for those who still remember it. And
yeah. I just rejoined. I think I hadn't been on in about 15 years. And then as I realized that for some reason, the older people seem to like me. So, and that's where they are. So, which is somewhat depressing, but also very grateful for their support. Thanks, Dan.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here.
Now time for Rabbi Schneier. Now, Rabbi Schneier is the first, he says, Jewish leader, mainstream rabbi, to speak directly with Mayor-elect Mamdani. Mamdani rang him on the way to visit Trump, and Rabbi, well, he tells us that he gave it to him. In fact, he goes through the conversation, so do not miss it. Here it is. Rabbi Schneier, thank you so much for joining me here on the Erin Molan Show.
It's my pleasure to join you, my dear.
You are the first, I think, Jewish leader, mainstream rabbi, to talk directly with the new mayor-elect of New York City, Mamdani. When did you have that conversation and what did it involve?
Well, last Friday he called me on his way to see President Trump in Washington. He wanted to express to me his concern with the demonstration that had taken place at Park East Synagogue, that coincidentally is my father's congregation. The mayor-elect is very familiar with my work globally in the building and strengthening of relations between Muslims and Jews. And I was quite frank in our exchange. You know, I expressed that I thought his condemnation was half-baked. Not only, on one hand, he condemned the protesters, on the other hand, he spoke of the misuse of sacred space for the organization, Nefesh B'Nefesh, that had rented out that facility at Park East Synagogue. And I told the mayor-elect that his comments were highly offensive, insensitive to the Jewish community. And then I segued into my travels, my experiences throughout the Arab and Muslim majority world. And I said to the mayor-elect, not only are you out of touch with the Jewish community, but you're out of touch, you're out of step with the greater Muslim world. I cited such countries as the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Azerbaijan, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, the Kingdom of Bahrain, and others all support a two-state solution. They may champion a Palestinian state, but never at the expense of a Jewish state. And here we have a mayor-elect who refuses to recognize the right of the state of Israel to exist as a Jewish state. And furthermore, I reminded the mayor that when you demonize the state of Israel, when you use such anti-Semitic tropes as genocide, apartheid, occupation, that you are putting Jews at risk. These
Rabbi,
kinds of comments will...
Absolutely. Did you point out to him as he rings you to express his concern that he has in so many ways contributed to what is occurring outside that synagogue?
I have pointed this out to him for the last few months. I've been very, very outspoken.
Yeah.
And I've been very, very critical of Zohran Mamdani. And furthermore, I refuse to allow anyone to bifurcate anti-Zionism from anti-Semitism, from Israel, from the Jewish religion, from Judaism. It's not a question of being Zionist. No, we are Jews. And as Jews, Israel, the state of Israel, is at the very core of our existence. That is the definition of being a Jew. And in my book, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I will not allow the Mamdanis of the world to bifurcate and to break out those two definitions.
I love the point you made to him about being out of touch as well with the Muslim world. I don't know if you know this about me, but I grew up in Indonesia for 7 or 8 years when I was younger, including during 1998 when the Suharto regime fell. I was in Indonesia less than a month ago. I love the country. I speak the language fluently. Halo, selamat sore. Saya cinta semua yang tinggal di Indonesia. Akan kembali mungkin bulan depan, saya pikir. Just a little message for my beautiful Indonesian friends. I care deeply when you see President Prabowo standing in the United Nations and acknowledging Israel's right to exist, the leader of the world's largest Islamic nation, when you look at what they have done with extremism and terrorism in their own country, all but eradicated it. Widodo prior to Prabowo have done the most phenomenal job because they know it hurts them more than anyone else.
But my dear, not only standing at the UN, he also offered 20,000 Indonesian troops to serve in the international force in Gaza. And President Widodo and I had a very, very strong relationship with President Widodo, who after the publication of my book, Sons of Abraham, which is probably the seminal text in Muslim Jewish relations, Random House is my publisher, the first country, the first government leader to translate that book into his indigenous language was Widodo back in 2015.
I did not know that.
I'm
that is
very,
amazing.
very familiar. But you have the Widodos and you have, the Mohammed bin Salmans and Mohammed bin Zayeds, all these leaders in the world who support a Jewish state of Israel. And we have a mayor-elect of the second largest Jewish population in the world who refuses to recognize Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. How twisted things are.
Yeah. Well, it's reflective of the entire world at the moment. Before I let you go, what was his reaction? Do you think he was expecting you to push back? Because you look at his meeting with Donald Trump and it was a love fest, kumbaya. You, it sounds like, actually pushed him, held him to account. It wouldn't have been an easy call for him. What kind of attitude did he give you back? Did he push back or did he acknowledge that you were right in any way?
Two things. First, I was very direct with him, but I also prefaced our conversation reminding him we can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. And I must tell you, he was very intrigued by what I said about the Muslim world. And think of, the irony that here's a rabbi who is engaged in probably 15 of the most prominent, powerful Arab and Muslim nations in the world, speaking to the first Muslim leader of New York who's ever even visited one of these countries. And he welcomed the opportunity. He said, look, you have my cell phone. Let's, I said, if you don't want to go with me on a world tour, then let's visit their ambassadors here in New York. So that was number one. But what he really welcomed was my suggestion. In basketball, we would refer to it as an easy layup. I said, I have an easy layup for you. When you become mayor, legislate here in New York that demonstrations, protests will be prohibited in front of any and every house of worship, be it a synagogue, a mosque, or a church. Yep. He loved it. He loved it. He welcomed it. He loved it. And he's texted me several times since we spoke. So let's see what happened. But remember that the state of Israel, that's my magnificent obsession. That's my preoccupation. And we must recognize it is the state of Israel that has restored the dignity and the honor of the Jewish people.
Rabbi, you are doing God's work, which is probably the definition of you being a rabbi, but you do it in a very unique, powerful, and effective way. Thank you for everything you are doing. I appreciate you joining us here on the show, and please keep us updated as well. And last thing, would you mind passing on the mayor-elect's number so I can invite him on my show?
I will ask him that we should go on your show together.
I would love that.
Only on my upcoming visit to Sydney, Australia. Maybe I'll invite the new mayor to come with me.
Done. I can only imagine. In fact, he'd get a great reception. There's a lot of people in Australia who feel the same way he does, unfortunately. Rabbi, thank you so much for everything. We'll chat to you soon.
All right, my dear. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Now we have Michael Radine, who is a lawyer who is suing the crypto guy that Trump pardoned because allegedly he's been funding October 7 and the atrocities and the aftermath. What the hell? To explain everything, because even I'm struggling to get my head around it, here he is. Michael Radine, thank you so very much for joining us here on the Erin Molan Show.
Erin, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Really, really looking forward to chatting to you and getting the reaction off some big news that's just dropped regarding a lawsuit. Can you tell us who you are suing, and why?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm an attorney with the law firm Osen LLC. We're the nation's premier law firm committed entirely to representing victims of international acts of terrorism. Yes. We represent victims of Hamas terrorism, Hezbollah. We represent hundreds of Gold Star families and U.S. veterans who were killed or injured in Iranian-backed attacks while serving in Iraq. We've represented families of Christian missionaries who were kidnapped and murdered by the FARC in Colombia. Our co-counsel represents Yazidis who were murdered and tortured and raped by ISIS. This is all we do. And what we've brought here is a new case against Binance and its founders. And Binance is the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange. And the way it got so big was it was designed, and our complaint will show these allegations, it was designed for crime. And it attracts criminals intentionally, and it attracts terrorist financiers, as I'll explain. And when I say that, this is their words. Binance's own chief compliance officer said in 2020 that Binance's customers, quote, are here for crime. Another Binance compliance officer joked that the company should put up a banner saying, quote, is washing drug money too hard these days? Come to Binance, we got cake for you. These are actual quotes that are spelled out in our complaint. So what has Binance done? It's a cryptocurrency exchange built, as we allege, to attract criminals. Now, Binance already got nailed by the Department of Justice. They reached a plea deal. They paid $4.3 billion in penalties. And the founder spent 4 months in jail, recently pardoned by President Trump.
Now, remind everyone who that is.
That is our good friend. So we've sued two founders. One is Changpeng Zhao, and the other is Wang Ying Chen. So Changpeng Zhao, he's the head of the company. He founded it. He's still the majority shareholder in the company. Did 4 months in prison for this conduct. And where is he? His line is that Binance, where's the whole company? Binance is wherever he and his laptop are. It's a service, we allege, that is designed to be outside of the reach of law enforcement. That's what makes it attractive to criminals. So he can fly around the world, opens his laptop, and there Binance is. At least that's what he claims.
So what's the October 7 link?
So Binance knowingly participates in, and this we allege in great detail in the complaint, moving hundreds of millions of dollars for Hamas, for Hezbollah, for the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is Iran's terror apparatus that runs these terror groups like proxies. And we allege a lot of it. Now, FinCEN, which is the U.S. Treasury Department's financial enforcement wing, said they reported that Hamas moved $2,000 for its Qassam brigades, that's its military sort of wing, on Binance. $2,000 is nothing. We have alleged with receipts hundreds of millions of dollars that they've moved. And so what we've done is that we have located Hamas fronts, Hezbollah fronts that are designated as an identified by the U.S. government and by the Israeli government, and we can track their wallets on the blockchain to see just how much money they're moving through Binance, which Binance, we allege, again in great detail, knows all about.
I was about to say, so it's not like they create it, they step back and they know nothing about what goes on, which, by the way, would not be okay regardless.
Right.
But you're saying they are aware of where this money is coming from, where it is going to, and what it is being used for.
Yeah, the quotes I gave before, they're more than happy to facilitate the crime. They've gotten all manner of warnings. You can see it even in the transactions themselves. There is a Hezbollah IRGC aligned gold for crypto smuggling network run out of South America. And I'll give you an example. You have a guy in Venezuela. He's 22 years old. He has an account. He moves $60 million on Binance. He's 22. Okay. He's not Venezuela's greatest investor. He is a stooge that is being used to move money for Hezbollah. You have case after case after case for this. Money flying in and flying out to identified Hezbollah accounts. You have entities designated before and after October 7th, and that's perhaps the worst thing, is that none of this stops after October 7th. Yeah. So just to give you a couple examples, Bycash, this is a U.S. designated Hamas front, moves at least $240 million worth of crypto through Binance before October 7th, 1.3 million after October 7th. Another example.
So even after they would have seen what had occurred and what their money that had gone through their program that their company had contributed to, they still allowed money to be transferred through. That's
right. And I can't imagine what someone might tell themselves in a normal day about letting entities like Hamas and Hezbollah on their network. But after 10/7, Binance allows Tobacco, this is another Israeli designated crypto Hamas front, to move $26 million after October 7th.
Can I ask you, what has been their reaction? And I'm running out of time here. What has been their reaction to the lawsuit? Have they put anything official forward, or have you heard? And what is the ultimate goal here? What are you hoping to? What is a win for you when it comes to this action?
A win is that they are held accountable for what they've done. A win is that we make a world where financing terrorism is economically not worth it.
Yes.
We have to make this too expensive for them. We have clients, Omer Abalva, who's our named client here. He was an American living in Maryland. He was a reservist in the Israeli army. He hears about 10/7. He sprints back to Israel and is killed, not in Gaza, by the way, at the Lebanese border by Hezbollah, who's trying to hop into this bloodbath in Israel, firing rockets and missiles over the border. Obviously, countless young people raped, tortured, murdered at the Nova Music Festival, all manner of heroes big and small. And we want Binance to face at least some consequences for letting that happen.
And have you heard from them a reaction as yet?
Very little, but I'm sure we're going to hear quite a bit more as this case proceeds.
Well, please come back on and let me know. Thank you for the incredible work you do. It is often a field that doesn't get spoken enough about when it comes to this legal side of trying to fight terrorism. But when it comes to what they value over anything else, I mean, for a lot of people, it's money. So you hit them where it hurts. So thank you for all that you do. And we can't wait to watch with interest and hope to God we get the right outcome and the victims of this terrorism get what they deserve.
Erin, thank you so much for having me on.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I hope you loved this episode. There were so many different parts to it. It was jam-packed, but we always want to provide you with absolute value. It's now time for some fan feedback, and I've got 3 things that I wanted to share with you here. Coco, the Canadian socialist rat, on X says, I'm sure with all the money you're getting by promoting the Zionist cause of Israel, you have no need for an OnlyFans page. But if you have one, please post it. Even if you're a genocidal freak, you're hot. He thinks I'm hot. Guys, it's really sweet. It's really sweet. I mean, we all know that the genocidal freaks are on the other side, but still, he thinks I'm hot. Guys, he thinks I'm hot. Thank you so much, Coco, the Canadian socialist rat. I can't wait to catch up on my next trip. Now, John has sent me an email via the website, and John's watched the matchmaking episode and has decided to give it a red-hot crack, and again, flattered. But his kind of shtick is, how's the most awesomely stunning, gorgeous lady on the planet doing? I saw your YouTube video with the millionaire matchmaker. I'd love to fly anywhere on the planet to see you, sweetheart, and enjoy very quality time together. Then he follows up with, hello, my lovely, lively, luscious Princess Erin. It's John from the USA. Here's a couple of pictures of me, Erin. I'm nearly 6'4", 215 pounds. And I'm sure this is some of the information you're needing from me. I hope all is well with you, sweetheart. One of his photos is with Yogi the Bear. I'm not going to show it to you because I would never out him, because God bless him. It's a beautiful thing that he's doing, and I'm very flattered, and it's lovely. I would just give some advice to John and to others. You can probably lessen the kind of lovely, luscious princess stuff. I think just less is more in that way. But points for trying. God bless, it's better than the death threats that I get daily, so thank you so much. And the last one, I'll keep this anonymous, just in case. Hi, Erin. Just watched your segment on Canada and how extremists have a foothold there. I live in Canada, and for the last few decades, Liberal government have brought in immigrants, refugees in great numbers and created vote banks. Canada is known internationally as a country with lax laws. What you see in the EU today is happening in Canada, except folks in the EU are waking up about the rampant migration in their respective countries. And we Canadians are in slumber. He's got it absolutely right. Yesterday's episode, all on Canada. Even if you're not Canadian, check it out, because as we know, what is happening somewhere in the Western world tends to be emulated elsewhere. It's either already where you are or it's coming. I love you all, even John, even the Canadian rat, dog, cat, mouse, whatever the hell that is. Again, he thinks I'm hot. I think you guys are hot. Not that looks matters. I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you really enjoyed what was a cracker episode. We loved putting it together for you. We'll have a bonus episode coming out on China. China is such a big deal here. In fact, the greatest enemy to the free world, the Chinese Communist Party. What are they doing at the moment? They're not jumping on board the Free Palestine movement. They're kind of sitting back a little bit, but they are benefiting almost more than anyone else from the chaos. And my guest goes through all of that. You cannot miss this episode. Love you guys. I'll be back then and also next week. Take care. Bye.